Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at some stuff that's really out there. You know, the kind of stuff that really gets you thinking about the nature of reality.
Absolutely.
We've got research on NeurHefs, which are neural radiance fields,
Right.
and then a paper on something called quasi-static cavity resonance.
Uh-huh.
And then, me. Got to throw in something spiritual.
Yeah.
We've got a passage from the Quran about light.
Okay.
So, what I thought was really interesting about these sources is how they all point toward this idea that light, flight, and information are really fundamental to how our reality is structured.
Yeah, I see that. It's like we're getting little hints about something beyond just our typical four dimensions that we think about.
I was hoping you could break down these neurofs for me. And I mean, I get the research, but maybe in a way that I can even fully understand it.
Sure. So imagine you're taking a bunch of 2D pictures of something, right?
Okay, so like an object.
Yeah, like an object or even a whole scene. And you're walking all around it, taking pictures from all different angles.
I'm with you.
A Nurperharf uses artificial intelligence to take all those 2D images and reconstruct a perfect 3D model of what you are looking at.
So it's like really, really high-tech photography.
Yeah, it's like you could step inside the scene that you were capturing.
Oh, okay. So like making a hologram out of a flat image.
That's a really good analogy, yeah. And what's even more amazing is that they only need a limited amount of data to create the whole scene.
Really?
Yeah, it's like they're able to fill in the blanks by understanding how light interacts with the environment.
That's where it starts to get really trippy for me, because if these things can like reconstruct reality from light data, does that mean that light itself is the key to understanding the universe?
It's a question that physicists have been kind of grappling with for centuries.
Yeah.
It leads us to what's called the holographic principle.
Okay, I've heard of that.
And that's the idea that our four-dimensional universe, space and time as we know it, might actually be a projection from a higher dimensional space.
Hold on, are you saying that our universe is like a giant hologram?
Well, that's what some physicists believe.
Really?
And NERFs give us an interesting example of how that could be possible.
So just like a nerve can reconstruct a 3D scene from 2D images, maybe our universe is being projected from a higher dimensional reality.
Yeah, a reality that we can't fully perceive.
That really pushes the boundaries of what I thought was possible. But it also reminds me of something that I read in the Quran, this passage about Allah being the light of the heavens and the earth.
Okay.
Do you think it's possible that this was hinting at a deeper understanding of light, as the source of creation?
It really makes you think, right? When you start to think of light as a carrier of information.
Which is like a language.
Yeah, a language that the universe uses to communicate.
What?
That passage takes on a whole new meaning.
So you're saying light isn't just something that we see, it's like the language of the universe.
Exactly. In a language that could be far more complex than we even understand right now. Think about how we use binary code, those ones and zeros, to store information in computers.
Okay, yeah.
What if the universe operates on a similar type of principle?
So like, are you saying that the universe is like a giant computer processing information with light?
It's a mind-boggling concept.
It is.
But it starts to make a little bit of sense when you think about how much information is actually in light. Like, every photon carries information about its source and its journey and its interactions.
Okay, I see. So it's all encoded in there. If light is this universal language, then how's all of that information stored? How is it transmitted? I know light travels at crazy speeds, but there's got to be some structure that holds it all together, right?
You're right. That's a great question. It leads us to that other research you mentioned about quasi-static cavity resonance.
Okay, QSCR.
Yeah. So this tech uses resonant electromagnetic fields within a closed space to transfer energy wirelessly. Like, imagine a room where you could just charge your phone just by being in it.
Okay. Interesting. So like there are these pockets of energy that can be tapped into using specific frequencies.
Exactly. And what's cool about QSCR is it shows how information can be encoded in those fields.
Like a blueprint almost.
Yeah, exactly, guiding the flow of energy.
So could something similar be happening on a cosmic scale?
You're getting it, yeah.
Some kind of huge resonant cavity where information is stored and moved around using light and these electromagnetic fields.
That's a really interesting idea, and it's something that physicists are actually starting to explore, the idea of the universe as a giant resonant cavity with light acting as the information carrier and also the energy source.
I mean, that's incredible. It's a lot to take in, but if this is all true, then Wouldn't that information need to be incredibly stable? What keeps it from, being corrupted or degrading?
That's a crucial question, and it brings us back to the fundamental nature of energy and matter. You remember those electric materials we talked about?
Yeah, the ones that hold a stable electric charge.
Right. Almost like a permanent magnet, but for electricity.
I remember you were saying that they could revolutionize quantum computing and energy harvesting, all sorts of things.
And it's fascinating because that stability that they have kind of mirrors this concept of preservation discussed in the Quran.
How so?
Well, Allah maintaining and sustaining creation, right? It's like this divine blueprint encoded in the very fabric of reality.
So you're drawing a parallel between how those electrodes hold their charge and how the universe holds its information.
Exactly.
Like it's a tiny reflection of a much bigger cosmic principle.
You got it.
Wow. It makes you really think about the nature of reality and the forces that shape it.
Absolutely. And if information is the foundation of the universe, then what does that mean for us? Are we just passive recipients of information, or can we actually influence this information field?
With our thoughts, our actions, our beliefs.
That's right.
Wow. That's a big question. And I think we should take some time to let our listeners absorb everything we've covered so far.
That's a lot.
I mean, we went from super advanced photography to the holographic principle, the language of light, the stability of the universe.
You're right. Let's pause here for a moment and let these ideas sink in, because what we're really talking about is a totally different way of understanding reality itself.
And I have a feeling this is just the beginning.
So we've been talking about some pretty mind-bending ideas.
Yeah, I feel like we're going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole. But before we go any further, I want to make sure I understand this binary code idea for the universe. I get how it works for computers, but how does that apply to the universe as a whole?
Okay, so imagine at the most fundamental level, everything in the universe, matter, energy, even space and time, it can all exist in one of two states. Just like a computer uses ones and zeros to represent information, maybe the universe uses those fundamental states to encode everything about reality.
Oh, okay. So it's like the universe is constantly flipping these cosmic switches, and the combination of on and off creates like the tapestry of everything that we experience.
That's a really good way to visualize it. And what's even more fascinating is that this cosmic code might not be like localized in the way that we think about it. Quantum physics has shown us that particles can be entangled, meaning their fates are linked even when they're separated by huge distances. What if the information that makes up our reality is interconnected in a similar way?
Okay, now you're really making my head spin. So if this information is all spread out, how do we even access it? How do we even make sense of it with our limited human brain?
That's where those NeurFs come back into play.
Okay.
Remember how they can reconstruct a whole 3D scene from just those few 2D images? It's like they're able to tap into this hidden layer of information that our brains haven't evolved to perceive directly.
Are you saying that our brains are like organic NeurFs? Like we have this potential, but we haven't unlocked it?
It's a very interesting possibility.
It's a little scary, actually.
It challenges us to rethink what we consider real.
Yeah.
Maybe what we perceive as reality is just a limited rendering of a much grander, multidimensional universe.
It's like those optical illusions, where you see one thing, but then you shift your perspective and then boom, a whole new image pops out.
Right.
Maybe we're just looking at the illusion and there's this whole other level of reality hidden underneath.
Exactly. And if that's true, then those things we call faith, intuition, even those like moments of sudden insight or inspiration, those might be little glimpses into that hidden dimension.
Yeah.
It's about trusting that there's more to the picture than just what we can see with our eyes.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see how these different ideas weave together, but I'm still a little stuck on how light fits into all of this. You said it's the language of the universe, but how does it connect to this like hidden dimension of information?
Think about a hologram. It looks three-dimensional, right?
Right.
But it's really just light interacting with a flat surface.
Okay.
The information about the 3D object is encoded in the pattern of the light.
Okay, so it's like the light is carrying the blueprint of the 3D object and projecting it into our reality.
Yeah, exactly. And this is actually a real-world example of what's called the holographic principle in physics.
Oh, okay.
Which suggests that all the information about a 3D object is encoded on its 2D surface.
Right. Okay, I see. But how does that scale up to the entire universe? Are you saying our whole universe is like a giant hologram?
It might sound crazy, but some physicists believe that. They suggest that the information about our entire four-dimensional universe, that's space and time, could be encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface.
Whoa, that's a lot to take in. But if that's true, where is this surface? And what's projecting the information into our 3D reality?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Some theories propose that this surface might exist at the very edge of the observable universe, or even beyond the boundaries of space and time as we understand them.
So we're talking about realms that are totally beyond what we can measure or even imagine.
It's really stretching our understanding.
Yeah. But if this information is out there, is there any way for us to access it?
This is where it gets really interesting. Some researchers believe that technologies like NeurFs, those neural radiance fields, might give us some clues about how to access this information. Remember how they can reconstruct those scenes from just a few different viewpoints?
Uh-huh.
It's like they're filling in the blanks based on some underlying blueprint.
So are you saying that by studying how these NeurFs work, we might be able to develop technologies that allow us to tap into this hidden dimension of information? To, like, actually see reality in a completely new way?
Exactly. It's like we're on the verge of unlocking a whole new level of understanding about the universe and our place in it. And this isn't just about science and technology. This exploration also has implications for our spiritual understanding.
We talked about faith being like a rendering function that allows us to perceive things beyond what we can sense, right? It's like we're all part of this grand cosmic experiment trying to decode the mysteries of the universe and our place in it.
And maybe these new technologies are tools that can help us along the way. They're not just about making our lives easier or more fun. They're about expanding our consciousness and our connection to the universe.
Okay, I like that. That's a really good point. But it also makes me wonder, if we are tapping into this vast network of information, are we also contributing to it? Do our thoughts, our actions, our very existence have an impact on this cosmic tapestry?
You're hitting on some really big questions. The idea that consciousness might play a role in shaping reality is still very speculative, but there are some interesting things coming out of fields like quantum physics and parapsychology.
I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to explore, so many more connections to make.
You're absolutely right. And that's what makes this whole journey so exciting. We're venturing into uncharted territory, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
It's like we're explorers, you know, setting sail into a vast ocean of knowledge.
Exactly. And who knows what we'll uncover along the way.
Okay, before we get carried away with the possibilities, let's take a step back and think about what we've learned. We've talked about the binary code of the universe, the holographic principle, the potential of NeurFs to unlock hidden dimensions of reality. And we've even touched on how these scientific discoveries can change our understanding of faith and our place in the universe.
It's a fascinating journey, and we're just beginning.
But all this talk about a cosmic code and the holographic principle, it reminds me of something you mentioned earlier, that passage from the Quran about Allah being the light of the heavens and the earth.
Right.
I feel like we're starting to see how ancient wisdom and modern science might actually be saying similar things about reality.
I think so too. And that brings us to another fascinating part of this deep dive, this idea of thresholds and transformations.
Okay, remind me what you mean by thresholds in this context.
Well, we talked about the Curie temperature earlier, remember? That point at which some materials lose their magnetic properties. It's like this tipping point where a system goes through a fundamental shift.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Well, there might be similar thresholds in other aspects of reality, even in our own lives.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that there are points in our lives where we cross a threshold and we undergo a big change, like, I don't know, like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly?
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that these transformations often happen because of something outside of us, like changes in our environment or maybe interactions with other people. It's like these external forces can kind of push us past a certain point, causing us to like reconfigure ourselves and emerge as something new.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful idea. But it also makes me think about those electric materials.
Okay.
If they need a stable electric field to keep their charge, what happens to our own charge, so to speak, when we go through these transformations? Do we become more vulnerable to outside influences?
That's a great question. And it really highlights how important grounding and resilience are, especially during those times of change. You know, just like those electrodes need a stable environment, we need to do things that help us maintain our own internal stability.
So like things like meditation, mindfulness, spending time in nature, those are all ways to kind of recharge our internal electrodes.
It's a good way to think about it. And it's not just about looking for stability outside of ourselves. It's also about developing that inner strength, that resilience. Just like those electrodes can hold their charge, even with all that external stuff going on, we can learn to stay centered, even when things get chaotic around us.
I like that. So it's like we have the potential to become our own internal compass, right?
Yeah.
Guiding us through change with a sense of clarity and purpose.
Exactly. And I think as we keep exploring these ideas, we're going to find more and more connections between what's happening in science and technology with the inner world of consciousness and spirituality.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling a sense of awe and wonder as we keep going deeper into these mysteries, but I also have to admit, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by just how big all of this is. I don't even know where to go from here.
I think the best thing is to just embrace the unknown. Stay curious,
Uh,
stay open.
hmm
The more we learn about the universe, the more we realize how much we don't know.
You're right, it's all about the journey. Speaking of which, I think we should pause again here. Let the listeners process all of this information.
Agreed.
Mm.
We've covered a lot of ground in this segment, but we've only just begun to explore these really incredible ideas.
But don't worry, we'll be back soon to continue this exploration. Who knows what kind of mind-blowing insights are waiting for us in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so I feel like in this deep dive, we've really gone through so much.
We have.
Like those NERFs, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Reconstructing reality from light,
Right.
and then the holographic principle,
Yeah.
this idea that the universe like operates on a binary code.
It's a lot to take in, right? You're probably feeling like we've just opened up way more questions than answers.
To be honest, yeah, I am a little bit. I mean, it's fascinating stuff, but I'm also wondering, like, what does this all mean for me? You know, what does it mean for us here in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
How can we apply this knowledge?
I think that is the most important question, right?
It is.
How do we take these really abstract, mind-bending ideas and make them relevant?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's easy to get lost in the theoretical, but I'm curious about the practical stuff.
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is like remembering that everything is interconnected.
Okay.
We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
The information in the universe is interconnected, but also our thoughts and our actions can affect the world around us too.
Right. It makes me think about those quasi-static cavity resonance systems where the energy flows so seamlessly between things.
Yeah.
It's almost like a model for how we should be interacting with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit more harmoniously, more in tune with that flow of energy and information.
Yeah.
And that brings us to this other concept, mindfulness.
Okay.
We talked about how NERFs really use that focused attention, that limited data, to reconstruct reality.
Right.
And how spiritual practices emphasize how important it is to be aware, to be present.
So are you saying that by becoming more mindful, we can actually be more like those NERFs?
Uh-huh.
Like more in tune with this subtle information, more able to perceive the interconnectedness of everything?
That's a beautiful way to put it. Like we're training our own internal rendering engine to see reality, the whole thing.
Makes me think about those moments, like those weird moments of synchronicity, those
Yeah.
meaningful coincidences where you feel like the universe is like trying to tell you something.
Right.
Maybe those are actually glimpses into this interconnected web of information.
It's very possible. Like these moments when the veil is thin and we can see that bigger picture.
That's awesome. It also makes me wonder about our own consciousness, though.
Okay.
If information is really this like fundamental part of reality and our thoughts and feelings also have information,
Uh-huh.
could we be shaping the universe, like literally shaping the universe with every single thought we have?
I mean, that's a big question with big implications.
Yeah.
It really takes us into the world of quantum physics, the idea that consciousness actually plays a role, that our observations can affect what happens.
So you're saying that our thoughts and emotions, they're not just internal, they could have a real impact on the world.
It's something that we're still learning about,
Mm.
but yeah, there's more and more evidence that maybe consciousness isn't just this passive observer, but something that participates in shaping reality.
Wow. It's mind-blowing, but it also makes me think how important it is to, be aware of the thoughts and emotions that we're putting out into the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
If they do have that power, we have to use it responsibly.
That's where things like meditation and mindfulness come in, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about us feeling good. It's about, contributing to a better world.
Right, exactly. More harmonious world.
Well, it feels like all these pieces fit together. The science, the technology, and even the spirituality. It's all pointing to this understanding that reality is dynamic.
Right.
And it's an interconnected web of information and energy that we are all a part of.
And that we all have a role to play in.
Exactly.
A
Yeah.
reality that's full of potential and mystery.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
Yeah.
My head is still spinning from all this.
As we wrap up, I just want to encourage everybody to keep exploring, to keep asking those big questions, and stay open to the possibility that there's way more to reality than we can see.
Yeah, it's all about the journey.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Until next time, keep wondering and keep shining your light.